Monster Hunter Stories is one of the coolest concepts for a game ever made. Combining the iconic and unrivaled creature designs of Capcom's Monster Hunter series with a JRPG-like dense plot and Pokémon-like creature collection mechanics is a match made in heaven. And the newest game in the series, Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection, seems to be fully realizing this incredible premise. I was able to play the first 15 hours of Monster Hunter Stories 3 ahead of its launch on March 13th. Here are my impressions so far. The best way I can describe Stories 3 is that it feels like a promise finally being fulfilled. Don't get me wrong, I love Stories 1 and especially 2, but both of the previous games felt like they were, for one reason or another, held back from fully realizing their potential. But not Stories 3. This is a game that fully commits to every one of its ideas, resulting in an extremely strong first impression. What truly stuck out to me in the game's first 2 story chapters was how it takes mechanics and concepts from the previous titles and expands them in both intelligent and elegant ways. You still collect monster eggs and hatch them into companions called monsties, which you then use to traverse the open world and participate in turn-based battles. But this basic gameplay premise has been fleshed out by giving you, the player, way more information on what you're doing. When you go collect eggs from a nest, the scattered eggs on its surface now actually match the eggs you can find in there, giving you a small preview of some of the monsters available. When you collect an egg of a monster you already have, the game will outright tell you what monster the egg belongs to, so no more guessing the patterns once you've gotten it once. The new and excellent Monsterpedia now lists detailed resistances and even attack patterns for every monster you encounter, and the same information can be pulled up mid-combat with a single button press. Now, all of this might sound like the game has become too easy, too frictionless. Your party even gets fully healed after every encounter, so damage never persists between battles. Well, you might be surprised to hear that I fainted more times in this preview section of Stories 3 alone than I did in the entirety of Stories 2. I was fighting for my goddamn life and got actually walled by a blue Yankutku, and it was amazing. The reason for this is that while the game does give players distinct advantages they did not have in previous games, Stories 3 compensates for that by making enemy behavior utterly ruthless. It's no Shin Megami Tensei in terms of difficulty, but it is a noticeable jump in challenge compared to the other games. The level curve also seems to have been made a little meaner. I was doing side stuff whenever I could, and I was still consistently underleveled. Even in the game's earliest hours, I found myself scrambling to make use of any and all tools at my disposal, switching frantically between monsters and desperately trying to survive. Not only are enemy monsters now more ferocious than ever, combat also has more moving parts than it did in previous games. In addition to the turn-based rock-paper-scissor combat seen in previous titles, Stories 3 introduces 2 new stats: Stamina for the player party and Wyvern Soul for enemies. Stamina regenerates passively each turn and is used to perform all skills except the most basic attack. It serves as a resource you must manage carefully to win, and it running out is how the game punishes you for mindlessly spamming the coolest looking move. Wyvern Soul, meanwhile, is essentially the enemy's stagger meter, and monsters will start missing their attacks and become vulnerable to powerful team-up moves once their Wyvern Soul is depleted. The catch is that only skills that use up stamina can actually damage an enemy's Wyvern Soul, creating an additional combat layer on top of the series' iconic attack type management. Now, because the combat is more demanding than ever, every other aspect of the game instantly matters more. Building your team is especially important this time around, and luckily, Stories 3 includes new systems that give you more options to play around with. The early game features a wide variety of monsters to use, offering a more balanced roster than either of the previous games did. Which monsters are available is also somewhat under a player's control, thanks to the new habitat restoration system. Basically, by intentionally releasing monsters that you've raised into the wilds, you can make that species more populous and more common, which can have effects on other monsters in the environment. Repopulating a monster species may cause them to appear more frequently, with stronger abilities, and even have them hatch with new elemental powers based on the region they hail from. For example, after I finally beat that blue Yankutku and stole its eggs, I released some of the hatchlings to increase their population and strength. Later, I hatched a green blue Yankutku with thunder abilities. I did this by accident, mind you, but it showed me the potential of this system, and I can't wait to tinker more with it. By creating the right environment, you can even cause certain species to mutate into subspecies and even deviants. As you can imagine, I am over the moon about this new feature, and I cannot wait to see what else we get to do with it in the full game. The combat's new difficulty, however, also encourages you to explore. If a new item or armor upgrade could be the difference between winning or losing, you're quickly going to feel compelled to scour the wilds for anything that could give you an edge. And I'm pleased to say that exploration in Stories 3 feels incredibly good. Monsters now actually feel notably different to ride. Fast runner monsters like Velocidrome allow you to zoom across the plains, while flexible and agile wyvern like Tobikadachi let you climb and platform your way up steep cliffs. Rider actions and monster switching in the overworld are now both seamless, giving traversal a very satisfying feel. The world that you get to traverse is equally wonderful. Vast landscapes full of little secrets and items to collect, while also offering a surprising diversity of biomes. I was consistently surprised by the places the game let me go to. I kept thinking, no way am I allowed to make this jump, only for the game to let me do just that. In some very cool cases, this allowed me to get certain high-level monsters earlier than I was supposed to, which felt like a great reward. Exploration is also how you encounter the game's two new enemy types. Feral monsters are monsters that have undergone crystallization and have gained unusual elemental powers as a result. They are pretty tough, but beating them allows you to set up a ranger camp, from which you can begin habitat restoration, as well as other things like cooking, fast traveling, and hatching monsters in the wild. Meanwhile, invasive monsters are subspecies that have begun conquering foreign ecosystems. These are essentially super bosses that cannot be killed outright on your first encounter with them, and must instead be repelled by solving a combat puzzle. Otherwise, they will simply annihilate you. It's well worth the trouble though, as a repelled invasive monster will always lead you to a crystallized den containing eggs which you cannot find anywhere else. Another fantastic part of exploration are monster tracks. Don't worry, no scout flies. As you wander the wilds, you will sometimes find these purple collectibles that represent traces of monster activity, footprints or fur and the like. These serve no purpose other than unlocking little ecology notes in the Monsterpedia. This is so cool to see, especially since many of these notes seem to include information from the rare Japan-only Hunter's Encyclopedia lore books, And it's wonderful to finally have some of this info accessible in-game, and I love that they're collectible. I always go out of my way to grab them if I see them somewhere on the horizon. This also ties into another really impressive aspect of Stories 3. The setting and, well, the story. Twisted Reflection fully commits to treating the world of Monster Hunter as proper fantasy fiction, and spins a much more intricate and nuanced tale compared to the previous games. You play as the prince, or princess, of Azuria, the sister kingdom to the nation of Vermeil. Once united as a great empire, these two fragment states are now at the brink of war due to an imminent natural apocalypse. The mysterious crystal encroachment, which turns entire landscapes into dead stone, has devastated Vermeil, which now seeks to force the rich and privileged Azuria to help them conquer new lands in the forbidden northern territories. As a result, Azuria begins mobilizing their own military, even attempting to force the prince and his squadron of peaceful ecologists into becoming a battalion of monster-riding soldiers. The prince, meanwhile, simply wants to understand why his mother, the turncoat queen, betrayed Azuria and disappeared in his youth, taking one of the last two Rathalos in the whole world with her. As you can tell, there's a lot going on, and the plot manages to really dig into these conflicts and character arcs with a surprising degree of maturity. The main novelty is that the protagonist is now fully voiced and follows a predetermined character journey. You still get to create their looks, but the prince is very much an established character. While this does reduce the ability for role-playing, from what I've seen, it is a clear improvement. No longer being mute allows the protagonist to take on an active role in the story, and ultimately creates a much more engaging narrative. I would like to give a special shout out to the voice acting of the male protagonist in English specifically. It's a performance that merges really subdued, natural speech with a theatrical purposefulness that I got completely blindsided by. It's seriously good stuff. In general, the English dub is really good. But the protagonist is not alone. They are the leader of the Rangers, a team of ecological researchers that, in short, makes for an amazing supporting cast. The Rangers are always with you. They hang around while you cook, they give you high fives and compliments after battles, and they all participate in the story actively. Each of them has their own unique personality and backstory, which you can further explore by doing their side stories. These episodic side quests allow you to spend more time with each of your party members, not just to learn more about them, but also to unlock new abilities. What really surprised me here were the production values. I kind of assumed these would be fairly low budget, but every side story includes various well-crafted, completely unique ideas, such as Cora taking you on a puzzle platformer journey, or Thea getting you into monster racing. It's an amazing blend of fresh gameplay and well-executed characterization, and I really cannot wait to see more of them. A few quick impressions right at the end here. The game looks gorgeous and runs like a dream, which also enhances the story through the well-directed cutscenes. That being said, there are a few graphical oddities. Shadows seem really jittery on certain models, such as Royal Ludroth, and there's some pop-in here and there if you pay attention. Neither really detracts from the game too much, at least not in my opinion, but it'd be nice if that got addressed at some point. NPCs in populated areas also seem to fade in and out really close to the player, which I would also like to see changed. Lastly, I do have two things I didn't like. The longsword is not really an additional weapon, but rather a replacement, as Sword and Shield has been removed. I get why all of the weapons have become a lot more complex in this game, and Sword and Shield was always kind of the more simpler outlier, but it's my weapon of choice, so that's a shame. I was also sad to see that armors are gender-locked again, after Wilds made them interchangeable, But overall, I was thoroughly impressed with what I got to play of Monster Hunter Stories 3. From the additions to gameplay, to the more ambitious plot, to all of the habitat restoration feature, it all promises to be extremely cool, and I cannot wait for the full release on March 13th. Thank you all so much for watching, as usual. And of course, a thank you to Capcom for the early preview copy of the game. As usual, I would like to extend a special thank you to all the people that support the channel monetarily, either on Patreon or over on YouTube channel memberships. A very special thank you to A. Jackson, Admiral Frost, Alistair in Wonderland, Artur Centeno, Austin, Autumns, Black Ace 202, Bö, Bruggy, Chocolate Coat, Claire Miboon, Darkest, Destro, Dragonlord, Dissy, Error Code, Ethan Toombs, Feopuz, Faye/Sleepy Tiki, Fieden, Glitch NPC, Harpier, Hellbug Hunter, Hudsan, I'm just happy to be here, Inepts, Iron Camel, It's Robin Now, Jacob Coleman, Joey Tribby 58, Magenta, Carl the Crab, Kelly Barnett, Kogath, Lieferdienst, Logan Bilodeau, Lufish, M1 Have 12, Macaroni Leviathan, Makamawi, Makot 02, Matt Hat 124, Meta Defiance, Mr. Pyramid, Molly Mockery, My Name Gone, Nico Soleil, Nils Schlatter, Noah Schantz, Oak Woodtree, Paige Gandalf Soda, Person 212, Precum King, Punonym, Quali, Rambling Robin, Raspberry, Regal Eagle, Resident Necoarch, Wronger 97, Rose, Ryan Hook, Skiba, Shebo, Shadow of the Wolf, Silly Wizard 97, Siragon, Sir Noot, Soruka, Tacti Wolf, The Iciest Man Alive, The Dollarfish, Thick, Tsuki Midnight Boshi, Ankh with Good Puss, Uthduna is an Octopus, Varaxus, Wandering Soul, Zaffi, Lino Garcia, Zai Bandit, Zion H.V. Augenson, and Kuron Neko. Thank you everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye, be well.